It's a quiet start to the year for cases, as it turns out. For this year's best cases of CES roundup, we won't have anything from NZXT, Corsair, Fractal, or Cooler Master, the usual suspects, because none of them had a major case presence at CES. That's not to overshadow, though, the show of force from several other manufacturers. In this best cases roundup, we'll go over EVGA's DG-7, Deepcool, InWin, SilverStone, Thermaltake, and Lian Li enclosures, which that one's a bit unique, from CES 2017. Before getting to that, this coverage is brought to you by CyberPower and their Cyber XL gaming PC, which, speaking of cases, uses an invertible motherboard tray layout and has an interesting injection molded front panel. Check out more in the link below. Starting off our coverage for the cases roundup, Deepcool CES presents included the new Arc 90 enclosure, the Earl Case Liquid, and the Baron, and there's also the Quad Stellar for a bit of an honorable mention. We're mostly interested, though, in the Arc 90. This is a full tower eATX enclosure that's got the expected tempered glass accoutrements and PSU shroud at the bottom, and, like everyone else on the planet, LEDs. Interestingly, the Arc 90 includes a Deepcool Captain 280EX AIO liquid cooler, including a flow meter in the front center of the chassis. The flow meter is pretty damn cool. It splits the left and right compartments of the enclosure cleanly down the middle, using an LED backlight to create something of a Stark Industries effect to the meter's tube. Other LEDs are positioned on the CPU block and PSU shroud where Deepcool's logo shines through, and the Arc 90, in terms of cooling, can accommodate up to a 360mm radiator, though it does again include the 280mm AIO unit pre-positioned for installation on the CPU. The Arc 90 will include a unique ventilation system on the non-glass side panel, a ribbon cable extender for vertical GPU installation, and 3 140mm fans pre-installed. Availability should start in May of this year at a TBD pricing, and we're on the list to review this one, so check back for that review once it's live, probably closer to May. The article linked below has more information on all of these cases, by the way, and specifically on Deepcool's entire lineup. EVGA's enclosure this year is a strong departure from last year's DG-87 case, which went with the odd approach of throwing every scrap of metal, plastic, and mirrors onto the largest body possible. The new DG-7, meanwhile, is a much smaller case. It's a simple mid-tower chassis with support for up to 7 total fans, though we don't know how many fans will be included just yet. The enclosure is fairly simple in every aspect. It's got a sort of Corsair C70 green-colored exterior, almost military green-gray, a thin steel power supply shroud, and an EVGA logo cut out of the shroud. From what EVGA tells us, that logo will be modified to use an LED backlight before the case is finalized and ships, and the tint will be lightened on the tempered glass side panel, and by the way, it does have tempered glass side panels, like everyone else. It also sounds like EVGA might be adding a much darker tempered glass side panel to the right side, so they can still tick the box of having tempered glass everywhere, but without actually exposing the cables and the things that you wouldn't want to see on the backside of the case. For now, the case should be priced around $100, which is actually pretty damn competitive with NZXT's S340 Elite and Corsair's 400 series cases, but we'll have to check and review the case once it's more finalized and has the fan spec completed. Enermax's Tron-like showcase at CES 2017 primarily featured an updated version of the Ostrog Advance. Now, the case that was on display is using brighter LEDs, and it's dubbed the Saberay. The Enermax Saberay will use Enermax's new LED fans with illumination for the blades, so it's a bit different from some of the other LED fans that are rain-lit, and it's capable of mounting radiators in sizes of 360, 280, and 240 millimeters. This includes a compartment in the side wall of the chassis, which is a bit unique, and there's also a compartment in the front panel and the top panel for radiator mounting. The case is a fairly standard mid-tower layout other than the sidewall fans that we mentioned, though we're still not sure yet if those are included in the final product in terms of actually fans that ship with the case. InWin's booth hosted several new spins on the InWin 303. They seem to have been bitten a bit by their own bug, and they're going crazy with InWin 303 remakes. This InWin 303 remake suite includes a shrink ray version of the 303. It's a shrunken down 303 unit that is mini-ITX form factor, and then of course they've got a version that's been hit with the RGB LED bug, but it actually makes some functionality differences that matter too. The latter of those two, the InWin 303 Type-C, is exactly the 303 chassis, but now with a USB Type-C connector in the front of the case. Big surprise. This is a good value add moving forward in the world of Kaby Lake and AM4 chipsets, And other than this, Inwin has done what everyone else has done on the planet. They've added LEDs to their case and increased the cost, though there is still a TBD on the price. So that said, Inwin has asked us to ask you to leave a comment below on how much you'd be willing to pay for the Inwin 303 Type-C. Now, that said, with the sort of snark aside on RGB LEDs, Inwin's implementation is at least unique, and this is the only thing really that matters at this point, because everyone has the RGB LED strips. The 303 Type-C uses some sort of laser etching on its side panel, which is powered via a simple PCB and pins stemming from the chassis, so it doesn't add extra cabling. Also at Inwin's booth, and more importantly, this one we think is the most noteworthy out of Inwin's lineup, that was the Inwin 301 mini-ITX case. This is a shrunken version of the 303 and is almost entirely identical other than the fact that it's smaller. The 301 looks like it could have some ventilation and breathing challenges for the front panel, and so will rely entirely on bottom intake for the GPU and CPU cooling. The 301 uses a top-mounted PSU as a result of this cooling layout, and should have some limited radiator support in the final product version, though we're not sure again because it's not a finalized product. CES often shows prototypes, and sometimes the products don't even make it to market. Quick side note, Inwin also had the medieval metal case from BS Mods, and that is a production unit, but it's $1,000, so it's not really going to land in our consumer roundup. Thermaltake. While on the topic of mini-ITX form factor cases, we've got two more for you. One is from Thermaltake and the other from SilverStone. The Thermaltake Core P1 TG is another use of the industry-wide shrink ray, serving the mini-ITX market as a smaller version of the Core P3 case, which was preceded by the larger Core P5 case. The Thermaltake Core P1 uses the TG suffix, quote-unquote, as an indication of its use of tempered glass, though this is one of the few instances where tempered glass does actually make a lot of sense, including the Lian Li instance at the end of this video. The reason it makes sense is because the P1 doesn't have traditional side panels. It also doesn't have a front panel or a back panel and is effectively an open-air test bench that's been prettied up a bit. Like the P3, the Core P1 TG can be wall-mounted using somewhat standard mounts and can house an ITX system with full open-loop cooling for peak showmanship. The case leverages a semi-modular layout for the video card installation and uses a support bracket that can install the card to be front-facing or removed for more traditional motherboard installation of the video card. Price is TBD on this one. Thermaltake's also got the Tower 900, just as a reminder, which seemed to be all over vendor booths at CES this year. We won't spend too much time on this one as it's been out for a little while and it wasn't just a CES, but it's worth a note. The Tower 900 is sort of like a display case using tempered glass on 3 sides and now supporting full cooling loops for customization, and the Tower 900 does actually have a price. Unlike most of these others, it sells at $250. Getting back to the mini-ITX cases, SilverStone's new SG14 is in full prototype phase and still has several iterations to go through. The SG branding is part of SilverStone's SuperGo series of enclosures, relying on small form factor for deployment as an HTPC gaming setup. The SG14 uses a more vertically oriented layout and relies on a single 140mm air penetrator fan at the bottom of the case, which pushes air up and out of the top meshing. The case currently uses bowed polycarbonate side panels with tinting for front and sides and has each semi-backlit by pre-installed RGB LED strips. That said, SilverStone asked us at CES to ask our viewers and readers what they think of the LEDs. SilverStone noted that the price could be below $100 if there are no LEDs pre-installed, but they're feeling the pressure from other manufacturers to add more flash to the enclosure. That flash, of course, comes at a price hike. Regardless of the LEDs, the chassis looks like a good mini-ITX replacement to the old SG10 and SG08 enclosures that we previously reviewed. Price will be less than $100 without LEDs. Full ATX PSUs are supported, as are GPUs up to 11 inches in length, though that may change to 10.5. The final enclosure isn't really a proper enclosure, it's more of furniture. That's because it's Lian Li's DK05 desk case that we saw at CES. This is Lian Li's standing desk case with a glass top, but this time the tempered glass actually has a purpose, namely to put stuff on. The DK05 can house 2 full systems up to eATX and motherboard form factor and uses 2 separate front panel controllers on either side of the desk for separating the systems. The desk uses an electric motor to drive the legs and comes with 4 presets for desk height, each of which can be modified with incremental adjustment from plus and minus buttons. We didn't measure exactly, but the desk comes up to about 1 meter high and uses a front angle of about 60 degrees to better fit chairs under the desk than the previous models, where you'd kind of bash your knees on the desk. The desk will include something like 8 to 12 fans depending on how the final design shakes out, and can support at least some minimal level of liquid cooling AIOs, but we're still waiting on final details. Price for the Lian Li DK05 will be about $1,700 to $1,800, but it's a bit of a mix of furniture. That's it for this roundup. As always, wait for our reviews and further articles before buying or pre-purchasing anything. Article for more information in the description below. Patreon link in the post-roll video to help us out directly if you like our type of coverage. Subscribe for more. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all next time.